Let's see. Can you hear me, Father James? I can hear you. You have your microphone off.
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear me well?
Yes, very well.
I see. I don't think you can see me.
No, I can't see you. Your video is switched off.
Okay.
Okay. Little.
I can hear you. Here. What the heck? Let's try it.
Okay, so
you can see me now?
I can see you and I can hear you.
Excellent.
Excellent. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Great. Thank you so much for accepting to have this meeting with me.
Hey, Father James, I forget you need to activate me to share a screen because I just want to show one little vignette when I speak.
Ah, okay. And share, one participant can share at a time. So yeah, but can you share can you try it now and see if you can share screen?
No.
You can't?
No, I cannot.
Oh. Okay. So
okay, now
yeah. You can now?
No, I cannot.
Okay. So can you share screen now?
Yep, I can now.
Okay.
Let me see. Can you see anything when I'm sharing?
Not yet appearing. Okay, yes. Yes, I can see your screen now.
Hey, there's the car. Okay, I'll leave that now, so I'll stop it.
Okay.
Let me practice to share that again. I'll leave it open.
Okay.
There, now it shows very quickly. No?
Good, yeah.
Wait. Just hold on. Photo. There you go, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. So I won't be able to see anybody.
No, you won't see anybody. You can only see just myself, and we'll be live on YouTube where people can join, because I'd wanted to send links to people to join in, but I thought there will be lots of distractions and muting and unmuting of microphones.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So will you introduce me, or do I need to introduce myself?
I will say a few words about you, then you can introduce yourself. I would like you to introduce yourself by yourself. Is that okay?
Oop. I just wrote you, and I meant to write my wife. So I still love you anyways. I said I start in 2 minutes, love you.
Oh dear.
But anyways, you can keep that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn off my WhatsApp because she'll be bugging me about the kids or whatever.
Okay.
Such is the life of a father with a small f.
Father with a small f. Okay.
Here in Rome, people call me father so often because everyone they meet is a religious.
Oh wow. because you really, you work with priests and the religious a lot.
Yeah. My kids make fun of me too. They're like, you should have been a priest. I know I love priests. Who knows?
Oh dear.
Should have been an Anglican.
Oh dear. So I will also spotlight you.
Okay.
Yeah, I will also spotlight you when the time comes.
Right. I'm gonna speak A little bit from the heart,
Okay.
a little bit, my experiences, approaching this brave new world like we've all experienced, and then
Mhm.
kind of go into some spiritual advice, and what we should do to find the solution.
Okay. Good. Um, Let me see how this looks here.
Oops, I should change my name too.
Yeah, I think so.
How's that? Better like this, no? Okay. You can hear me well, Father?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Yes, better like that.
Excellent.
Exactly. Yeah, I can hear you very well. Absolutely. Mm, I'm not sure why it's not showing me how to spotlight you.
I think you have to pin me. You have to click on my photo on my image and say pin.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you right click on my image, it says pin.
Yes, okay. I will ping you now.
I mean, it's not necessarily as long as I'm speaking, I'll be the main.
The
I
main
don't know.
person.
I
Yeah.
think while I'm speaking, you can pin me.
Yes, okay. Mm. So I will send this live now to go live on YouTube immediately.
Okay.
Yes. Mm. Now we have gone live on
Okay.
YouTube.
Right. Hello, everybody.
So thank you so much, Michael, for accepting to have this faith chat discussion with me on COVID-19 and the God solution. It is a topic that has been in my mind for quite a time now, because I've always thought about how we can find God in the midst of the world's trials, in the midst of our sufferings, how we can find God, how God also responds to us, especially during this moment of uncertainties. COVID-19 has left us or has asked us so many questions and has left us with, always seeking for an answer, questions that always seek for an answer. And yet many answers have not been got. We go back to God. And I would like you to, let us into what can be the God solution to the world's uncertainties today. And for those who have tuned in to listen to us, I'm speaking with Mr. Michael. Severance, the director of Acton Institute. Michael, I will hand over to you now to introduce yourself and lead us into our discussion today.
Yes, thank you, Father James. It's so great to be with you and with all your faithful in Scotland and throughout the UK and back in Nigeria, which is a country very dear to my heart. Many, as you know, we have many close friends in common in your homeland. And someday I will make it there. It's my dream. I'm the Nigerian dreamer. So
exactly. I know. Your brother John has been to Nigeria.
Yes.
Family, yes.
Yeah, I was every year. I'm invited to go. I'm invited to go again this year. So who knows? God, trust in God. But anyways, here away we go with the topic you chose, and you chose a topic that's very dear to my intellectual life and my spiritual life. It's a very existential topic. In my think tank, the Acton Institute. Actually, it's not my think tank. It's Father Sirico's think tank. But I manage the Rome office, and we here in Rome are always struggling with literally with the same question about what it is to struggle. And to struggle means to live perhaps not fully what we're meant to be. And this is the deepest part of the intellectual and spiritual frustration that we felt over the past years, that perhaps we're existing, we're alive, we're not exactly living. And so in the other half of this discussion is about living and reaching out to what we should be. And part of the problem, part of the frustration is about the should. So we're kind of halfway there. We know what to do, but we're not exactly there yet. So let's rewind into a year ago. I remember a year ago, I was finishing a very joyous work trip in Portugal and Spain, two of my favorite countries in Europe. And I've been traveling about 3 weeks very intensely and meeting many people, and not a worry on my heart about the oncoming pandemic. It had already entered into Italy, but it was considered just kind of a freak episode. And I was happy living my vocation to the fullest, traveling, meeting people, doing conferences on books, another conference with our superiors within the church. And I tell you, I was probably at the height of my career in terms of my think tank job and what I believe that God has called me to do for a lifetime. And it's always that ironic moment where right when you're at the top is when you fall the hardest. And I think we all have experienced this lesson. Maybe not all of us were at the maximum or the height of our professional calling, of our spiritual calling, of our family calling, or whatever. But I can definitely say in my case, I was feeling like I was at the top. And as an omen, my favorite sports player had died that weekend, Kobe Bryant, basketball player legend. And, in all honesty, he was my favorite basketball player, not because of his skills on the court. Of course, he's one of the all-time scorers. He had one of the persons who won the most championships within the National Basketball Association in America. And he's a beloved person for his athletic skills. But what I cherished about him was his reconversion to the faith. And he also was a person who fell deeply into sin. And, as you know, he was involved in accused of rape. His wife nearly left him, but he refound himself through the faith. He hit the bottom, and he came up only because he found his Catholic faith again. And he died in a helicopter crash just an hour after attending early morning Sunday Mass before going off to a basketball camp with his children. So when I found out he died, and I heard the pandemic was growing when I was in the airport coming back from Madrid. They were already making announcements that things were changing, and that was kind of a turning point. That was the beginning of my struggle. And in March already here in Italy, there were lockdowns. Italy was the country in Europe got hit the hardest and the first. And immediately there were many struggles on my behalf. From the top of my professional career, we were fearful of closing down this office here in Rome. What we do within our professional work is we hold conferences, in-person conferences. We had just had the most successful conference ever in Rome at the Vatican Pontifical University of the Urbaniana with over 500 people in attendance. We had smashed all the records of attendance. So if we can't hold in-person conferences, what do we do? And so the immediate fear was, okay, we got to shut down because we just can't sit around inside our homes and act like we're running a international think tank. And of course, like anyone with families, I'm a father with a small f, as I say. So I have 3 children, 2 teenagers who are all of a sudden locked up at home with their mother and father, who are telling them what to do 24/7. And so we had to deal with a lot of teen warfare, as we call it in my home. And some of my family got COVID. Some of my friends got COVID. A few of my friends died from COVID. One of my best friends here in Rome is just now getting out of COVID. And so just like anyone, the fear of dying enters in your mind, and you start looking at yourself quite intensely. I'm not even 50 years old yet, but I'm getting up there where I can have less a chance of survival. So just like anybody, we struggle as human persons, falling from the top of our calling, and struggling and crawling on the floor of life, wondering what we do and where we're going. And that's so it's not just a metaphor; it's a literal experience. If anyone thinks that they can pass 60 to 80 years on this planet Earth without some type of existential struggle, I think we'll have a difficult time getting into heaven. And this is part of the theme today, is that in times of adversity, just like the cross, Christ had his passion. Of course, he was also persecuted while preaching the kingdom of heaven. We won't be sanctified, and we're not going to be prepared for something which is much better, which is our ultimate goal, and in the other world. But anyways, let's talk just for a few minutes about the real impact of COVID on this world. In our think tank, we look at the way society is developing, where it's flourishing, where it's falling apart, where it's corrupt. But there's nothing worse than an invisible part of nature that destroys all of your political economic structure, which is so nice and tidy intellectually, maybe on a political platform, which is easy to execute with a majority vote. But in comes this microscopic being that overthrows everything. I mean, it's the greatest terrorist on earth. And so anything that we're trying to construct in terms of a better kingdom on earth is quickly and easily defeated by something as small and invisible as a COVID-19. But first of all, COVID, as we all know, has driven, I would say, a sort of apocalyptic wedge between people. It's divided people into 2 black and white camps. We have the frightened and the courageous, people that are easily become violent or remain peaceful, those that continue to be hopeful, but others are thrown down into despair. And there's the doubters and trusters, the believers and non-believers, complainers and the joyous. So, what we might expect from an Armageddon-like experience is that we're being divided into two different camps for judgment. So there's that kind of apocalyptic sense of a pandemic that may destroy humanity, but it also splits us right down the middle in terms of our natural temperaments and either our vicious or virtuous characters that have been developed over our lifetimes. So in this sense, we must be like the 10 virgins in Christ's parable, that some have a little bit more oil in their lamps and can last through the night of darkness while waiting for the bridegroom to arrive. And others are a little bit on short supply in terms of their vices and their defective temperaments. So this has been a time of preparation to see when a real crisis hits, are we willing to persevere in a saintly way, or do we fall prey to a more, let's say, vicious spirit or demonic spirit, and giving prey to our weaknesses and sins and vice, etc. Anyways, on a large scale, there's obviously been a huge impact on the economy. Just here in Italy, in this glorious eternal city of Rome, I think for the first time we began to think it's not quite so eternal. The city of Rome was ever flowing with tourism, ever flowing with conferences, ever flowing with new life and art and everything. It's just a flourishing city. It's a bustling city all time. And it's come to a total halt. Just below my office here in Rome, I think there's 5 shuttered businesses permanently. Along Via Nazionale, the main shopping street, I think half the businesses are permanently shut down. And there was this tapestry salesman on Via Nazionale here in Rome, and every year it says, going out of business, 75% off Persian rugs. And it was just a ruse to sell the rugs quickly, because all the tourists that would come into town would think, oh, he's closing, going to buy a $3,000 Persian rug that would normally cost $10,000. But the virus finally he shut down this year. It wasn't a ruse anymore. And like him, one after one, there was a domino effect of restaurants and hotels. The hotels are, I think 70% of them are shut down right now. And so the latest statistic in terms of the poverty index update here in Italy, it's gone up 45%. Italy is 45% more poor than it was one year. It's insane. And it's not going to be easily recoverable. So, and this is leading to dependence on virtually bankrupt welfare state here in Italy. People are looking for unemployment benefits, looking for early pension benefits, looking for sick leave, all these things. And the whole nation's broke. It's just, pensioners aren't even receiving their normal allotments on a monthly basis anymore. It's awful. So we're at a real critical point now. Either we move forward economically, we have courage, we hold our heads up high and trust, and begin becoming a civil society once again. And other obvious impact we've seen in terms of international politics. There's been a lot of power grabs on national levels, but also in terms of global levels. We've seen the collusion of the quote unquote collusion of the global resetters. They want to get together all the transnational corporations and international aid agencies and UN agencies to form some type of coalition to reset the political economy through the world for this kind of brave new world that's envisioned by persons like Klaus Schwab of these world meetings in Switzerland. And likewise in America, we've seen a total switch out of Republican power for Democratic power, through seeing a takeover in terms of more of a welfare state political vision where the government will be taking care of more of its citizens, and there'll be perhaps a nationalization of certain industries and things like this. And then, Father James, have you seen also one of the greatest impacts was on the church in terms of the parish life, especially in those 3 or 4 months in which we were shuttered out of our houses of worship, attending the Mass or our church services if we're non-Catholics in our pajamas. No, not putting on our Sunday best anymore, that's for sure. Even with my own children, I see them come down the stairs and their hair would, they would have bedheads going to church, and they wouldn't be paying attention, and they'd just be tuning out and not listening to what Father was preaching. And I remember at a certain point, the webcam in our church was so bad that it lost all color. Everything was green. We called it the Martian Mass. The priest was green, the tabernacle was green, the pews were green. And my child just blurted out in English, "It's like we're on Mars." So, I mean, that was about as bad as it gets. That was the last straw. We're like, this is it. We cannot do this anymore. And so, anyways, so we're getting back to normal here in Italy in terms of church life, at least. The economy is still on the brink of destruction if we don't make some fast political economic moves in the next trimester, I would say. Anyways, let's turn our conversation a little bit away from the overall vision, and let's kind of look at COVID as a cataclysm. That's what it's being promoted as. That's the marketing for COVID-19, that this is the worst event in several generations. Since the Great War, that's what's commonly said, since the Great War, since World War II. My initial reaction to that as an optimist, as a believer, as a person of natural hope and theological hope, is that it's just not true. It's just not true. There's got to be something worse. There's got to be something worse. I know the Great War was bad, and COVID is bad, but COVID is nothing near the Great War. And simply, if we compare the last real pandemic, which was the Spanish flu in 1917, 1918, so a little over 100 years ago, people might not know this, but literally a third of the planet became infected. There's 500 million. There's only 1.5 billion people at the time. So 500 million people became infected, and there was 50 million deaths, okay? Compare that to COVID-19, that we're just, we're barely over 2.2 million deaths worldwide. And it hasn't even reached 500,000 in the US. In the UK, it's a little over 110,000. And Italy here, rounding up, it's about 90,000. So that's, those are grains of sand in terms of overall lethality of the disease compared to the Spanish flu over 100 years ago. So that's already a reason for hope that things really aren't that bad. God has not left us. He may have sent us some bed lice to deal with, some fairly bad disease, but it's certainly not wiping out human existence. And that's already grounds for hope, which is good. So as the overall premise is that, we should face disease, pandemics, any type of cataclysm with fear. Fear is good, which causes us to be prudent, but we must not be terrorized by cataclysm. And, put things in perspective, the wars in the last 3 or 4 decades have been far worse in terms of overall destruction. And this level of disease is certainly not that it was 100 years ago. And the other major premise here in our discussion is that, and this comes from the inspiration of a book that I was just reading, that's written by a British author by the name of Peter Sage. Some of you people listening now may have heard of him. He's a famous entrepreneur in Britain, but he was also a coach, a personal coach. So he coached people in business in terms of their attitudes towards business, entrepreneurship. And also he's pretty wise spiritually. In fact, his surname is Sage, and his first name is Peter Peter Sage.
Sage, like Sage.
Yeah, Peter Sage. Yeah, here's the book. This is the book I've been reading on the train for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And it's number one. It's a bestseller on Amazon. And it looked like a good read, so I bought it. And anyways, one of the things I've learned from reading his book is that Peter was imprisoned in Pentonville, in northern part of London. If I'm not mistaken, near the Burnsbury district. Anyways, the north side of London. And Pentonville is one of the prisons that's reserved for Category A, Category B convicts. So those that are, reoffenders for drug dealing, that are murderers, that have serial offenses in terms of high crimes. This was the man that was convicted just for contempt of court. I think he was arguing his case a little bit too emotionally with the judge. The judge just threw him into prison for bad behavior within the court, in presenting his case. He was in prison because of a shark deal, as he called it, a shark deal that he made with Hewlett Packard, making an IT deal with them. And he lost his case. He got all ticked off in court, and the church was so mad at him, he threw him in with the worst prison in Britain. So here comes this guy. He's joyous. He's an optimist. He's an entrepreneur. He's pretty much a very low-level crime person, and he is thrown in the middle of all these thugs, all these worst criminals, serial killers, rapists, drug dealers, crack addicts. And, the very first thing he noticed in being among them, that he was literally a fish out of water. And this isn't his metaphor, but this is the metaphor that I've understood from reading his book, is that he was a person among what I would call bottom feeders in life. And these bottom feeders are like, say, the catfish in life that go down to the bottom of the pond, and they live off all the waste, all the easy catch, all the kind of the low lying fruit in life. They become a beast with sort of the worst metaphoric food in life. They may be good to eat, but they're not considered the prized fish of the sea or the pond or whatever. So these bottom feeders that he met, were kind of gluttons of their vicious emotions. Feelings of anger and panic and despair and regret, solitude, self-hatred, violence. And the longer they stayed in Pentonville, the more they became gluttons of the food that they find at the bottom of life, the pits of life. And the more they stayed in that state, the more it was harder for them to struggle, since this is our topic today, to struggle to get up and lead a reformed life. They just couldn't. They're weighed down by this bottom-dwelling food in terms of their state of their soul and their heart and their mind. And so they kept themselves literally weighted down by this food at the bottom and the pits of life, and not reaching up to what they should be to be reformed and living out what God has called them to do in life. So Peter Sage wrote this pamphlet for all the prisoners called Mud or Stars. Mud or Stars. And he noticed that when looking outside the prison window in his cell, the prisoners would either stare straight down into the muddy dirt in the recreational grounds, or be staring up towards the heavens, dreaming about what they could be, which was a little depressing, but that was a lot better than just staring down in the mud and saying how disgusting everything was around them. And that little pamphlet had became a bestseller within Pentonville. And he made thousands of copies, and people had read it, and turned a lot of prisoners around who had made amends with their spouses, their children, started thinking about their talents that God had given them. He was even allowed to, Peter Sage was allowed to preach in the Christian chapel there, and really had turned people around. He, took his adversity, and he saw that as what God had called him to do in those 6 months that he spent at Prisonville. He said, God put me here for a reason. And I'm not just going to sit around here and get depressed and feel sorry for myself and fall into self-pity. And I'm not going to become a bottom dweller like all the violent, vicious people who are now my housemates in life. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to keep my head high. I'm going to stare at the stars. I'm going to encourage them to reach for the heavens. And that enough in looking upwards, looking up towards God, towards the heaven, towards our calling, to what he's asked us to do while we are locked up, as we have been during COVID, is one of the greatest metaphors of life. Maybe we're not in a real prison, but we felt like we've been imprisoned in terms of our struggle to get out to do our jobs, perhaps being in a domestic situation that's not quite as ideal as it was before, and the various other things that make us feel we're a bit incarcerated. Anyway, so in terms of this book I've been reading about Pentonville and Peter Sage motivating the prisoners to look upwards, we have quickly learned that his cheery attitude turned out to be just as contagious as these bottom-dwelling foods. Just as contagious as, say, is depression or violence or hatred. That takes one cheery person, one person with hope. And as my priest at my local parish said, it takes not just a strong man, but a very strong man to defeat the evil one. The evil one who can lie within our hearts and our minds and infect us with his contagion is a strong man, strong enough to pull us down, strong enough to derail us from our callings in life and God's providence. But when we first start to hope, the hope does wonders. It's the vaccine. Hope is the vaccine to the disease, we might say. So once we're injected with hope, not once or twice, but many times on a daily basis, we slowly get over the diseases that are pulling us down. So breaking down this metaphor psychologically, there are those that are bottom feeders, as we were saying, that prefer to stay at kind of lower levels of consciousness. They prefer to stay in their comfort zone of poor emotions like anger and pride and irascibility, jealousy, extended grief and sadness and shame and guilt. All these things are good in themselves. Like we said, it's good to fear because at least we don't get hit by a car. It's good to feel shame and because we repent. It's good to feel grief because it means we love that person who we've lost. But all of these emotions extended into long periods become vicious, and they pull us down. And among them, we find many other, let's call them, say, bastard children of vice that produce more and more and weigh us down even more. I mean, I never forget when Judas had betrayed Jesus in the film The Passion by Mel Gibson. Remember, he was surrounded by children that were just screaming and pulling and yanking at him, and that those were like the children of his own sins, pulling him down and distracting him, driving him crazy. So we must be careful with these healthy emotions, even if we call them bottom-feeding emotions, those that weigh us down, that we must get over them and really concentrate on the upper level of consciousness, those that raise us up towards the stars, that take us up from the mud of existence. And these are virtues like courage and truthfulness and willfulness and Of course, anyone that's a Christian knows that we must love unconditionally and give, have a life of giving, not receiving. And above all, these are virtues that enchant us with life. We we just think it's amazing the day that we'll be out of prison. We think it's amazing the day that we'll have this impenetrable joy from serving a life of vocation, from serving God and loving others. And those are things that should pump up our chest muscles, and flex and be ready to run the race of life. These are powerful virtues, but they're also powerful emotions. Remember that the word virtue comes from the Latin virtus, meaning power or strength. And as Aristotle had explained, that the virtues, use the emotions like petrol or like gasoline to fuel our will to serve the good. So we have to use our emotions like fuel to strengthen and guide and give impetus to what we seek in the good. And together that becomes, with a good idea that reaches an objective, becomes a virtuous action, and over time a virtuous habit. So, sort of concluding some of my discussion, here's some advice from an optimist like me. First of all, be persistent. We need to be persistent. We need to look at life as like, going to the gym. We do a gym workout, but from one day to the next, we don't really see any massive improvement. We're not seeing the extra tightness in our muscle, the little weight we've lost, a few grams or whatever. But over time, over a few weeks, over a few months, we look back, we look at ourselves in the mirror again, and we see improvement. But none of that is impossible unless we do that every day. So, if we've been in a year of struggling, perhaps it's going to take us a year or two to get out of the struggle. But it's possible. There's no quick fix to sadness or depression or self-doubt. Nothing's going to turn you around in a week or two. So if we've been in a state for a year, it may take another state to get out of the year, but we have to be persistent and believe that it's possible. And one other thing that we learn in life is that that our plans are not necessarily a straight line. Here I'd like to share a screen to show a little image. I remember someone put this on my Facebook during month of April or May. Up here at the top, this is me. I thought that I can just cruise to success, go straight, just ride that bike as fast as I can, maybe a little uphill, but I'm going to get here to this checkered flag. But lo and behold, there was COVID. This is life after COVID. I got to walk the tightrope. I'm going to hop on a boat, sink to the bottom, have to crawl over here. This is going to be the next 34 years of my life, but I'm ready. I'm ready more than ever. And I hope all of you are too. I mean, if there's going to be a COVID-19, there's going to be COVID-20, COVID-21, whatever it is, metaphorically. But get ready for the next worst thing, not the next best thing. But life's an adventure, and this is beautiful. The lowest lows are experienced by the highest highs, and we should be looking forward to that sensation when we reach the height of the next step in the plan. So we must be adventurous. We must be heroic. And heroic means being persistent, staying the course, keeping our mind on the end game, which is redemption and salvation. It's also being happy here on life, but that's only a segue to eternal happiness. And my overall advice would be what psychologists would call active meditation. Okay, active meditation means to focus on close your eyes and focus on what you should be doing as you're doing that. And once you achieve it, and the felicity, the flourishing that you feel in terms of joy, in terms of real natural joy, once you achieve that. And there's no better place to do that other than in God's house. So if we're going to meditate on leading the life that God has called us to do, to be the person that we're fully meant to be, created to, we need to think about it, enjoy it, envision it, love it, experience the joy in our minds of actually doing that. But there's no better place to do that other than in God's house. And us Catholics, I think the very best thing would be do that in front of the Blessed Sacrament. To be before the body and blood of Christ. And when I walk to work in Rome, I stop in the main square in Rome, which is Piazza Venezia. And below the former headquarters of Mussolini is an adoration chapel, right in the heart of Rome. No one goes there. There's always one nun inside or one other lost person like myself. And just before I go to work, I spend a few minutes there with the Lord. And what I say to him is, look, my friend, I'm broke. I'm broken. I'm here struggling to get to work. I'm lucky to get to work today because we're not locked out again. And but I can't do anymore. I can't do this last mile of my walk without you. This is the little conversation I have with him every day. So I pray for my own brokenness. I pray for those that don't believe in themselves, the people that feel that they're alone, that God has fallen asleep on the boat in the storm, as the apostles had felt abandoned on the Sea of Galilee. He said, Jesus, when you're sleeping, you're in your little divine dream world, and we're living an earthly nightmare. Wake up! Don't you know? And how many of us have felt abandoned this year? So, but it's so important to speak to our friend, the Lord, directly, because he is our friend. He's our master. He's our Lord. He's our Heavenly Father. We report to him. We're his direct reports. But he's our friend too. The evangelicals among the Christians know this better than anyone, I think, that what a personal relationship with our Lord and Savior actually means. So us Catholics, those that are listening to us Catholics, we got to do a better job at that. And we need to visit our Lord in person before the Blessed Sacrament. And we need to spend time with him in prayer and just talking to him. Just talk to him. Don't go through the formalities of 10 Hail Marys, 1 Our Father, 1 Glory Be, and get out of there. Just talk to him. Be a child in the faith. Bare your soul. I would even, experience the strongest emotion you can and let yourself go in front of him and then put yourself in his arms and trust. So here we get to the conclusion of my discussion is, so what is the God solution? Well, it's God. Sorry, it's so easy. It's so easy. Just go to God. Trust in God. He's there. He's there, okay? So we believe in an invisible enemy, this COVID-19, which is no one has ever seen with their eyes, okay? Well, we haven't exactly seen God in person. Jesus hasn't walked literally among us, but he's here with us, right? So just as if you put more faith, just as much faith in the fear of this invisible enemy, we need to put just as much faith and confidence and trust in the invisible friend, might call it that, okay? We're not downplaying God's presence because he's everywhere. He's he's literally in the Eucharist. He's physically present among us, but he's also spiritually present. But it's crazy that I think that we have more faith in an invisible enemy than we have faith in an invisible friend. And with that, I conclude. So choose your side. Choose your camp: fear or faith, enemy or friendship. There we go.
Thank you so much, Michael, for this very wonderful.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And great advice to a lot of us.
Yeah, I'm just a guy trying to live his faith. I'm struggling like anyone else, but I'm broken. Maybe I'm different in that way. I'm the first one to say I'm broke.
Exactly. So yes, and even like everyone else as well, including the priests, we are all making the effort to attain this eternal beatitude. Thank you so much. Hope is the vaccine for the disease. And we can only find the best of hope when we hold on to God,
Yeah,
because God is our hope.
that's
Now,
right.
regarding to this, someone asked a question from here. I've got comments and questions
Oh no,
from the
they're
first
not too tough.
from the first person. Claire Michaels is asking,
Yeah.
from experiences in this pandemic, the reality of the existence of God is being questioned. It is said that the plans of God are the plans of good and not of evil. Then what is his plans for us exactly?
What is his plans for us exactly?
Yes,
In terms of the pandemic, if I understood the question.
yes.
Well, I think, everything comes from God. Okay. So as we know in the so-called food chain, you know, there's there's um there's those that live off others. The virus is simply part of the food chain. It's like any other created object. It has to live within a host and feed itself. So in terms of God's natural plan, he made things to live, right? God made things to live. Viruses need to live, bacteria need to live, lions need to live, our our cats need to live, our children need to live, and we need to live. So this is actually a positive thing, that to see a virus work so hard, struggle so hard to continue to exist. You know, we should be more like the virus. And that's actually funny when you think about it, how hard they work to transmit themselves, to find new hosts, to become new variants, to modify. They're the entrepreneurs of living, you know. They know how to survive. They're going to find methods to do it. So, just on a natural physical level, the fact that a virus spreads and exists is a testament to the ingenuity of life. And the virus itself can be a good master in terms of our own personal survival as a human race. I mean, it's 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 not all we can, if secondly, if we eliminated all evil in life, as Saint Augustine said, we wouldn't know the good. We know the good in contrast. So to a certain degree, this may be being overly optimistic, but it's we need evil to know the good. We need the lack of the good to know what fills the void. Okay, but did God? Was it God's plan to perhaps engineer a virus if it was made in a lab? Was God's plan to sell a bat in a wet market illegally if it happened that way? No, that's not God's plan. That's man's plan. Okay, that's what's going against God's plan. There's no divine plan in the evil destruction of the world. The only time it's going to happen is when the world ends. But everything that happens between the start and the end of the world, is either a natural element of nature, or it's actually human malice. So, what's God's plan in all this? God's plan is to get us back to Him. Okay, if we're struggling, don't look anywhere else than God. That's the solution. So you better get on your knees and you better pray for help and ask for His friendship and guidance. That's His plan. He wants you to love Him. So in these times of adversity, He may be asking you to step up in terms of your personal relationship with Him.
You made mention of end of the world, because, and then the apocalyptic, nature of this particular virus. A whole lot of people during last year would, thought that the world was coming to an end. And even till now, a whole lot of, people are still holding firm to that idea that this virus is just, the world coming to an end.
Right.
Like the words of the Revelation, people take it as, this is it for us. The world is coming to an end. So how do you address that?
Yeah, I think I addressed this already. Well, look at the statistics.
Yes, you did
I
actually.
mean, come on.
Yes.
Just like, just go back 100 years and look, 500 million people were infected. 50 million people died within a year. We've only had, you know, barely 3% of that within a year. And look at what, modern medicine has created. Back then, they didn't even have antibiotics. They had, a few antibiotics. Penicillin wasn't in effect. You die from the simplest diseases back then. And so, you know, this is the devil's workshop, is our idleness. I mean, this is the problem. It's like we're sitting around as bottom feeders in life, being worrywarts, and the devil's like, this is it. I'm going to really send them into despair. This is really easy. Vanity used to be my favorite sin, but I tell you, despair and fear, those are probably the number one, my number one favorite sins at this moment. Just look at the statistics. There's nothing apocalyptic about this virus. It may reach, say, like 500 million over a course of 50 years. So it's gonna take that long.
Mm-hmm.
And there's already reasons for hope. We've seen therapeutics at work. We've seen the ingenuity of modern medicine in terms of plasma, or the hydroxychloroquine and zinc compounds, natural vitamin D.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and above all, also look at the statistics. Only 1 to 3% of people over the age of 50 over the age of 60 are threatened with a life illness because of COVID. So no, it just isn't apocalypse. It just isn't. I mean, if I was walking down the street and I had to step over corpses to get into my office, I would say it's Armageddon. But
So,
I'm walking down Rome. I'm smelling the coffee. I'm smelling the espresso, the freshly baked pizza pie in the morning. I get to visit Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament in Piazza Venezia. I get to see some of the most beautiful art here in Rome still.
and there are still more childbirth even going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the world's not. I would just say it's just not realistic, because we have for the sake of comparison with other end times, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I've got lots of people who are comments now, not question, comment.
Okay.
One is saying a most informative and interesting presentation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Saying, I agree, persistence is the key, never relent. One is saying, what a fantastic illustration and analogy, I can totally relate. One is saying, pray, hope, and don't worry, words from Padre Pio. And one express their worries. The worst thing for me is not getting to Mass and receiving the Eucharist.
Oh, I agree.
Mass, yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for this message. Feels like you are talking to me from one of our viewers. Then one, thank you so much for this. And then one also, exactly, and I don't mind is indeed the devil's lab.
Yes.
Now, let's go into the vaccine. Today, we have got the vaccine. And
Right.
a whole lot of people are still asking questions about the legality, the morality behind the vaccine as well.
Right.
Knowing that we can't entirely trust politicians to their words. We can't entirely hold them to their words, because there are a lot of conspiracies going around today, which really point to still the apocalyptic nature of the world and the science taking over religion and the rest of them, trying to have control over the human mind, the human person, the human body. So it has made a whole lot of people fear taking the vaccine and are rejecting the vaccine. Do you think, from your own point of view, that the vaccine is worth having or taking?
Yes. I mean, yes. From my point of view, well, I have problems with the the vaccines that have been developed from cell lines of aborted fetuses, I can't digest that. I can't digest that morally. But I have more problems in terms of the rush of delivery. In my undergraduate studies, I was biology and I read philosophy and biology. And to work at the cellular level, that's where you see God's greatest work of creation. And to produce a vaccine that works with the messenger RNA is really, in a way, an attempt to rewrite human biological history, because it's inserting a genetic code that acts as a replication of device for the cell membrane or the spikes, which allow for a level of recognition and production of T cells, etc. So I understand the logic of that, but still, we're inserting a genetic device, might call that a genetic tool, that allows for replication of a mock disease or whatever. The old types of vaccines were just to throw a few scraps of the virus within the immune system, allow it to recognize, wouldn't be able to reproduce itself, but it would allow the T cells to be replicated. And that's what's actually being developed in China. They're not using the mRNA model. So this rush to delivery of a type of vaccine that's never really been tried on a global scale like this causes me some some level of suspicion. My oldest brother is working for a company back in the United States that has been testing some of the effects of the vaccine. Just they're working for see if there's been side effects or monitoring patients. And I asked him what was his advice, and he expressed the same sentiment I have. It's perhaps just it's too fast. It's too fast. So there's the moral conundrum of wondering if the effectiveness of these vaccines are so because of cell lines developed from aborted fetuses. With that, I have problems, but also have problems just in terms of the basic science and experimentation. I think we need more time. And above all, we have valid therapeutics. We have valid prophylactics that can, at least for the young, they're not so old like myself, are probably just fine. Why should we be trusting something that's been developed at some quote unquote warp speed when we don't know the long-term risks and benefits? We just don't. And what also my brother was telling me this summer, he says, look, there's already variants. This is before we knew the variant in England. But he's already telling me there were variants already. There was 5 or 6 variants that hadn't been disclosed to the press. So you develop one vaccine, you have to get another vaccine, next year another vaccine, and then you're piling up these unnatural elements in your body. We just don't know. I just be a little suspicious. I'm not against vaccines in general, but I'm very worried above all about the rush to delivery.
Oh, that's you share the same idea with myself, because I was speaking to a medical doctor in London who herself is working with one of the developers in Oxford,
Yeah.
the other one from Oxford. And even the lab scientist said himself that he wouldn't take the vaccine himself, and I wonder why then are they pushing it out there for people, which I understand that the vaccine does not actually prevent you from getting the virus, because a whole lot of people that have taken both the first batch and the second batch of the vaccine have also the virus. So it still beats our imagination, my imagination, why it still continues to happen, even after the vaccine is out and even after most people have actually taken the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, we do know with other vaccines developed with the Gates Foundation, the Polish bishops commissioned a private study on the vaccines. No, I'm sorry, the Kenyan bishops of Kenya. There's a famous story in which they were dubious of the vaccines being paid by the Gates Foundation in in their homeland and commissioned a private contractor to study the activations within the vaccine, and there were abortifacients within the formula, and that wasn't disclosed to the public. So I'm not saying attached to this the vaccines developed by Pfizer and Moderna are some type of population control mechanism. I wouldn't necessarily believe that. I don't see any evidence of that. But I just think there's just there'll be an overall efficacy, and there's a danger in terms of some type of unnatural element being transmitted permanently in our bodies. I just don't know. And the evidence just isn't there. We're not walking over corpses in the streets yet. So I just don't get it.
So we still put our trust in God.
Yeah, I've been ridiculed publicly for my opinions, being perhaps not fearful enough, but I just don't see the evidence. I don't see the evidence. I mean, that comes from my philosophical and scientific training. I just don't see it. I literally don't see the evidence for widespread fear and panic. It's just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then someone said here, thanks, I agree, clinical trials have not been robust, and DNA is as opposed to RNA. RNA use is also a cause of concern.
Yeah. It is a cause of concern. I mean, I just, a little anecdote about myself is, I told you I was reading, as we say in America, studying biology and philosophy as an undergraduate in San Francisco. And this is back in the year 1989 when I started university. And the University of California, Berkeley had created was in charge of the Human Genome Mapping Project. So they're going to map human DNA. And so across the Bay Bridge, where I was studying in San Francisco and Berkeley, they were leading a group of scientists who were mapping the human genome. And I wanted to transfer to California, Berkeley, and be part of that project. That was my dream. I thought this is what God wanted me to do. And I was loving science. I was finished with the philosophy. I just needed to go straight into biology. And, I applied to go to Cal Berkeley, and I got in. Berkeley, they call the Harvard of the West, one of the Harvards of the West, but it's one of the more prestigious universities. So I was quite happy to be there. And, my mother intercepted my admission statement or acceptance statement. And she told me, says, if you go there, you study science without philosophy and theology, you're going to become a monster. This is literally what she said. She was so angry at me. She held up the letter like this, like, Sonny boy, and like Nancy Pelosi through Trump, just ripped it up, right in front of me. And she says, you can study science. You can go to a career in science, but not until you've studied philosophy and theology. She was absolutely right. I was jumping the gun in terms of, the right way to do it. Because if you look at science and you think you can dominate nature like the creator of the universe, you're heading down the wrong path. So she saw my level of enthusiasm and sin of pride flowering within me, that I would literally perhaps join the wrong team. Think that I can produce this miraculous vaccine, so-called miraculous vaccine, in 4 or 5 years or whatever, because I've mapped the human genome or disease or whatever, and make my contribution of my legacy. It was all about me saving the world. So I think, going back to our dependence and our relationship with God, it begins with our contemplation of His universe, contemplate of His nature, even of His virus. It's His virus. It's not ours. We don't own it. He's got the keys to the virus,
He allowed it. He allowed it to be there.
But I mean, that is a switch of perspective when you say it's His with a capital H and not mine with a capital M, It's His. I mean, there's only so much we can do, and if we work with God with reverence, with His plan for nature, we will find the God solutions. That's all, big part of today's discussion is, just turn back to God. It's so simple.
Mhm.
Let him be the main driver.
Mhm.
We can be more of the co-pilots, but he's in charge.
Mhm. And just someone's asked here if Pope Francis has asked everyone to take the vaccine.
They wrote a sort of a disclaimer through the Pontifical Academy for Life, saying that while this is not authored by the Pope, but approved by the Pope, and it admitted that at least the Moderna vaccine seemed to be derived from cell lines of aborted fetuses, but without another practical solution. It's admissible. I think that's the word they use. Admissible. Not that it's right or just, that it's turn a blind eye.
Mhm.
But the Pope got the vaccine.
Yes.
He received it.
Mhm.
So, and that's the way that's his consent to doing it. So, going back to what we were saying before, I personally have moral problems with receiving any medicine derived from aborted fetus tissue.
Mhm.
Um, that's a line that I'm not willing to cross.
Yeah.
The Vatican basically said in its statement, it's gonna, it's kind of gray, and you decide.
Mhm. And then
So we don't have clear advice from the Vatican.
advice, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a pray and choose.
Right. Flip a coin.
Yeah. Pray and choose. So well, someone actually commented and saying studying the personal life of suffering saints has worked very well for me. Saint Mother Teresa said that suffering draws us closer to the heart of the thirst Jesus on the cross. And he says, I agree with you that this pandemic is an opportunity for us to develop a personal relationship or deepen our existing relationship with Jesus Christ, which exactly it's what you said, and that is.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity without suffering isn't Christianity. It's the mark of our existence. We should hold it up like a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we think we can, go throughout life as a golfer, as a pensioner on a beach, forget about it. We are meant to suffer. And why do we suffer? Because it makes us strong. And why do we need to be strong? Because those pearly gates in heaven don't swing open very easily. You need some. That's what my grandmother used to tell me. Those you think you can walk through heavens like one of those automatic sliding doors you get into heaven. As we go in the supermarket, woo, it's open. Hey, I'm in.
No way.
Man, you push those pearly gates, they're going to weigh a ton. You better be pearly burly and in terms of natural virtue, saintly. You need strength to open those gates.
Mm-hmm.
They're
And
not
that's
just
why it takes a
swing
strong
open automatically for you.
Mm-hmm. And
So
that's why it takes a stronger man to defeat the strong virus and the strong evil.
yeah, I think maybe that's sort of an exaggerated metaphor by my grandmother, but our strength is not just for here on earth. It's there must be some higher purpose in heaven which we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
May allow for a greater assistance or level of intercession we can give with our fellow men and women back on earth once we do pass into paradise. Perhaps it'll allow us less time in purgatory. We just don't know, but it's good to be as strong as possible for as long as we live, and that strength will carry forward into the afterlife.
Well, thank you so much. This just a discussion between two persons, but one is saying universal precautions are best to observe meticulous hand washing, mask wearing, social distancing, eye protection when appropriate. And then Chidima Ajoko just approved that as well. So I don't think we have any more questions coming up or any other comments coming up, and I remember you will have to run or walk, whichever way, to get to the train station.
Yeah, to the train.
Yeah, to catch a train.
Up and away, as Superman would say, you know.
So
I just jump out my window, I put my cape on, and I fly away.
fly away. And
I would love
quite
it.
unfortunately, how this COVID-19 has affected the, last year, and I don't know if it will affect also this year's meeting in Michigan in June.
Yeah, we're planning for something perhaps semi-live.
Okay.
It could be our Acton University, since we call all nations of the world to the little city of Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
The international travel is going to be restricted as it is now. It's not going to be fully open. So the entry into the United States from international travel, wherever that is, from Spain or Moldavia or Nigeria or the South Pole, it's going to be restricted until the pandemic ends.
Mm-hmm.
However, for those that attend from within at least the American borders, it won't be such an issue.
Sure.
So the honest answer is we still don't know. If we do our best, we'll have a semi-live event. Those that can make it, make it. Those that can't. And those that can't will join a virtual meeting like we did last year. We're all going a bit weary of doing these virtual events. It's not the ideal case in terms of gathering. We're still in an ecclesia. That means to assemble.
Mm-hmm.
We must unite together physically and spiritually. So this is painful for all of us not be able to join in person. Mm-hmm. And see the real joy, physical joy, spiritual joy on people's faces when meeting them as brothers and sisters in Christ. Mm-hmm. So we'll see, Father James, but it could be 50-50. It could be all virtual again. We just don't know yet.
Don't know yet. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael, for this very wonderful, enriching discussion we've had today. Maybe in my next discussion or later on, I would have to speak to your brother so that maybe I could have a faith sharing with himself and the family.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because it's a very faith-filled family. I've always admired your extended family.
Yeah, you'll be remissioned by the Irish again.
Yes.
Their Irish music.
Yes. and where I am here in Scotland, we also have certain Irish influence.
Yeah, the Celtic influence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But my brother John would be an excellent guest. His children would be an excellent backup band.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mike. Yeah, and just the last person here says, thank you so much. Have enjoyed this very informative. So
yes, I've enjoyed being with all of you, all of my invisible friends.
I know.
Keep the faith, live for God, love everyone unconditionally as Christ did. That's the best we can do. Stay on those upper level of consciousness. Don't focus on the bottom of the pond. Let's rise to the top and breathe and swim, and we'll make it to shore. That's for sure. Jesus is with us in the storm, even if he's snoring.
Exactly.
Just give him a nudge. Go visit him. Go visit him, and we'll get there. So everyone, keep the faith, be persistent, stay the course. Coraggio, as we say in Italian here, and we'll make it. It's just the lights at the end of the tunnel. We'll be there. Mm-hmm. We'll be there very soon. I know it.
Thank you.
Okay.
God bless you, Michael.
God bless you too, Father James.
Safe journey back home.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte. Arrivederci.